Greg Godovitz first came to fame in the early 1970s as a member of the band Fludd. By '75, he'd formed his own group, Goddo. This is Greg's story.
I grew up in a house of music. My mother sang on the radio during the war. Watching the adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, really digging Ricky Nelson, I decided at about 10 that I wanted to be a guitar player. So my dad took me to this guy, I still remember his name, George Armstrong, not to be confused with the famous Maple Leaf. He was at Broadview in Danforth, and they got me an acoustic guitar. And of course, I'd never practiced. And I used to just stand in the bathroom in front of the mirror practicing, looking like Ricky Nelson. After 10 weeks, my dad took me back, and the guy said, "Mr. Godovitz, this kid's never going to be a musician." You were wrong, George. And then my brother Gary brought home Beatlemania with the famous Robert Freeman shot of them all in half silhouette. I remember looking at it and went, they look stupid. Dropped the needle on the groove, It Won't Be Long came on, light bulb went off. That was the end of it, or the beginning of it.
When the Beatles first toured North America in the summer of 1964, Greg slept on the sidewalk outside Toronto's Maple Leaf Gardens the night before the box office opened, with money enough to buy tickets for he and his classmates. Things didn't exactly work out as Greg had planned.
I was only 13 at the time. I think I had enough money on me for 167 tickets. And the next morning, of course, we woke up and there was 10,000 people lined up. And I went up and I asked the guy, "I need 167 tickets, please." And he goes, "2 per customer." So I got the 2 tickets and went outside and saw the lineup. I said, well, I'm not going to line up 80 more times. So, I split, gave the money back to the principal. And all of a sudden I was the most popular guy in school because I had the extra ticket,
During his career, Greg played in the bands The Pretty Ones, the Backdoor Blues Band, The Pigs, The Mushroom Castle, Sherman and Peabody, Fludd, Goddo, Carpet Frogs, and the Anger Brothers. But he says you never forget your first.
Chronologically, I was in a group called The Wanderers when I really couldn't play. I was just learning how to play, but I could sing. And I also had the only bass guitar amplifier probably in Scarborough. So I was needed in the band because we put the microphone that the singer used through it. When we did our first gig, the singer was doing Twist and Shout, and I was doing the harmonies. And the guy that was a promoter of the gig took the microphone off him because he heard that I could actually sing, stuck it on me, and I didn't even miss a beat. I just went into the John Lennon part and started singing it. And of course, the band fired me directly. The singer was so incensed that he said, "We don't want you in the band, you can't play anyway."
While still in school, Greg connected with Ed and Brian Pilling, who were both originally from Birmingham, England. Together they formed The Pretty Ones, and a few years later, Fludd.
It wasn't until I discovered this poem by Richard Kipling called Fludd the Seeker that I saw that spelling, F-L-U-D-D. I don't know how they came up with that spelling for the band. It was just we could have called it F-L-O-O-D, but F-L-U-D-D looked better for some reason. With the Goddo thing, originally the band was G-O-D-O, but people kept saying, "What's Goddo?" So and even though, Ed Pilling actually was the first one to call me Goddo because of Godovitz, and it sort of stuck. So we stuck another D in it, and it wasn't a conscious thing. It just seemed like we had to do it in order for people to look at the word and know how to pronounce it.
For their second album in 1972, Fludd ran into problems with their record company over the proposed album title.
We wanted to call the album Cock On, and the record company said there's no way. And cock on is just an English, expression for right on. Cock on, mate. We decided to do a photograph for Rainbow magazine, and we were completely naked except for the funny boots we wore back in those days, and we sort of tucked everything in. And it came out in the next issue of Rainbow as a 2-page fold-out with this story underneath it, and we got banned from all the high schools because of it. We got the call that day, "Listen, Led Zeppelin's playing tonight. You guys want to open up?" Great. I remember Brian and Ed Pilling were out in back, and they said, "Go tell John Bonham that we're here." So, Of course I knew he was the drummer. That was their first gig in this little, 800-seat venue. So I knocked on the door, opened the door. Jimmy Page was looking really cool. A couple of chicks hanging off of him. Saw Robert Plant and John Paul Jones, and Bonzo comes over. I said, yeah, I was sent up here because Brian and Ed Pilley, and he grabbed me like this. He went, "Where are they?" Drags me down the stairs, jumps into their arms. They were all friends from Birmingham. Anyway, I was on stage just behind his drum kit when the curtains opened up. And it was funny, maybe it was because I was mad because we didn't get to play in front of this thing, but I thought, oh, these guys stink. It's just more white trash blues from England. I left after 3 songs and went down to Yorkville. There was 2 real factors why I left the band. I think the prog rock thing was just starting, and all of a sudden, John Anderson, the drummer, had to be a vibe player. The focus changed from girls and smoking pot to let's be the greatest musicians of all time. I wasn't interested in that. All I wanted to do was have fun.
In 1975, Greg formed Goddo with Gino Scarpelli on guitar and Doug Inglis on drums. They met with such success in Canada that for their 3rd album, 1979's An Act of Goddo, they decided to record in the U.S.
We'd been recording for about 3 weeks at this great studio in Orlando. And we finished the album, mixed it, and then we had to safety master, which means we take the master tapes to another studio and get another copy made, which they leave at the studio. So we got to Criteria, and it's one of the best studios in the world. You walk in the door and there's that huge picture of John Travolta in the white suit. Welcome to Criteria, the home of Saturday Night Fever, picture of the Bee Gees. And I'm in working on doing the mastering. And all of a sudden, this little head pops around the door, and I instantly recognized him as Morris Gibb of the Bee Gees. So he comes in, sits down. He listens to the classical overture that I co-composed with an arranger. And he goes, "You do this?" Yeah. I said, "Yeah, it's all melodies from the album that I just thought would be a good idea to roll into one." So all of a sudden, Chantel comes on, which is this French and English ballad that I'd written during the Fludd era. And it gets to the first chorus, and it goes, "Chantel, I need you, baby," like this. And I looked at Tim, the engineer, I said, "What the hell just happened there?" He goes, "I don't know." I roll it back, same thing. So we stopped the tape, and I said, "What the hell are we gonna do? They've just mangled our tape." And Morris goes, "Well, this is fabulous." I said, "How do you figure this is fabulous, man?" He goes, "Well, I want you to stay with me at my house here in Miami. I want you to meet Robert Stigwood. And you can hang around with us, and we'll redo this great song with like a full orchestra." I said, "Look, man," I said, "you guys get 6 months to make an album. I get 3 weeks, and now your machinery has mangled my master. I want you to get the hell out of here now." So he leaves. All of a sudden, Tim runs the tape again, and it's the start of Chantel. So I looked at him, I said, "What's going on?" He goes, "It must have been a bad edit that I didn't edit out of the master." I said, "Hang on a second. Do you mean to tell me that I just told Morris Gibb, who offered to introduce me to Robert Stigwood, to get the hell out of here?" "Yeah." So I'm out of the seat going, Morris. He wouldn't talk to me.
By far, Goddo's most successful song was their 1981 release, Pretty Bad Boy.
I'm just a pretty bad boy. I'm just a pretty bad boy. Pretty bad boys need pretty bad, pretty girls too.
I'd written Pretty Bad Boy originally as sort of an Ian Hunter kind of song. "Hey, you good looking in the very front row." I sort of envisioned it as a more up-tempo, all the young dudes, with sort of a rip-off of Werewolves of London. We went in to record it, and we had a heck of a time finding something that fit in that middle bit where a solo should be. We tried solo after solo, both of Gino and myself. Traveling with me is this 4-year-old named Russell Nakashima. He was the roadie's girlfriend's brother's kid. He was like a son to me, took him everywhere. All of a sudden I got this idea. I said, "Hey Russell, you want to try something for me?" "Sure, Greg." I set him up on a stool. We put a microphone. I was right next to him in the studio. I said, "When I do this to you, I want you to say I'm just a pretty bad boy." And he did it. We did it 4 times. And then there was this one where it almost sounds like he's sighing. like he's resigned to the fact that he's just a pretty bad boy. And I looked at the engineer, I said, that's our solo. It was the biggest selling record we ever had. Then, of course, we started using him in concert. I've got this wonderful picture of him walking out on the stage. He's in front of his mic at the Gardens, and he's looking over his sunglasses at the crowd. And I said, are you okay? He goes, it's bigger than a high school. I said, it's much bigger than a high school. You're going to be fine. But he was terrified. He was standing there just, I used to get him to do this little dance. So at the Gardens, there's this great shot of me giving him a kick in the ass. And then he started instantly doing his dance, and of course, the place went nuts. Playing in front of 50,000 people at the C&E Stadium and getting an encore at 11 o'clock in the morning was pretty neat. I mean, I had to insult the audience to get it, because I had this thing where they all sing along and they didn't. I said, you guys are gonna sleep? I'm gonna sleep. And I just laid down on the stage while Doug and Gino kept playing. And I stayed there for a couple of minutes. And then this roar went up, and I got up and I said, okay, we're all awake now? Let's let them hear you in Oakville, and they all did it.
In 2001, Greg's autobiography was published to critical acclaim. He reunited with Gino Scarpelli and Doug Inglis in 2010 for a Goddo 35th anniversary concert. These days, Greg Godovitz continues to perform across Canada and says he'll always follow his musical muse wherever it leads him.
I've been playing music for 46 years. I don't see any end in sight, so it almost would be nice to end it falling down on stage, you know, but not for a long time.